So how's it going, everybody? My name is Hanif. I am the current web director for UFT Developers, and this is going to be a series of lectures, videos going over basically web development. So just so you get a picture of who I am, who the voice is, that's me right there. So this first lecture is going to be on front-end web development, specifically on HTML and CSS, and don't worry if you don't know what those are. I'm going to go over what those are. So web development is a pretty complex field. There's a lot of things in it. It's easy to start, but there's a lot of stuff, and there's no way in 4 hours and 4 videos I'm going to be able to cover it all, so I'm actually not going to. So you can think of this as sort of like an introduction to what you can do, what can be done, somewhere to get you started. So I will be expecting some kind of background knowledge, but I'm going to show you where to go get it. So these resources here, so if you go over to our UFT Developers website, uftdev.ca, and click on the Resources tab, and then click on Web Resources, we have a PDF with a bunch of links. So if you've never done web development before or never done programming before, that's cool. These right here are a great place to start. If you have done web development, and even if you're very, very good at web development, these over here will probably help you out, especially that one. Very helpful. So if you ever find yourself at some point lost during the video, don't worry about it. You can pause and go look something up. If you're looking for reference material, like what is he talking about, here might be a good place. Or if you just want a very detailed lesson on how to do absolutely everything, this might be the thing for you. Anyway, so what are HTML and CSS? So let me show you something. So let's go to a website that I'm sure all of you are on, most of you anyway, Facebook. So it's cool, looks nice, but what does it really look like? What makes it look like this? So if we if we right click and go to View Page Source, this mess is what makes Facebook, or at least the front page of Facebook, look like that. So this is probably a little bit too crazy to start with. Doesn't look very nice at all, so we are going to close this. But if you go to any other website, like Twitter, and go to, for some reason I can't, no, there we go. Sorry. We'll get to that later. View Page Source. You'll see something very similar. Lots of code. So, what is that code? So let's start with HTML. So HTML, if we go to Wikipedia, which I actually conveniently have open in this tab, according to Wikipedia, which is great, by the way, don't listen to people that say it's bad, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and there's a bunch of stuff that here, that tells you a lot of detailed stuff about HTML, but basically what you need to know is that HTML is the content of a web page. So these words, Wikipedia, English, all those things, these links, that's all going to be HTML. So I'll quickly go over CSS and then we'll start going into an example. So CSS, again, if we look it up on Wikipedia, stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So basically you can think of HTML as the content of the web page and CSS as the way it looks. So HTML is the content, and then CSS is the styling and makes it look pretty. So let's get started. So this document here, this HTML document that I have conveniently named awesomeness.html is a lot cleaner than the other ones that I showed you earlier. There's not much going on in terms of the content, but all the important elements in any web page are here. So before I go over that, I'm going to show you how to open this up in your browser. So if you were to copy this file, you can easily open it up in your browser just by clicking on it and opening it up in Chrome or Firefox or whatever browser that you want to see. So I'm going to show you something real quick. If you right click on any web page and you go to Inspect Element, here you should be able to see basically the web page that we have. So everything looks fine. There's nothing on the screen, but we can see the web page. So what's in here, real quick? So first of all, we have this tag at the top that I'm going to address later. But basically, HTML is structured in a way where you have these things called tags. A tag is something that looks like this. Most tags have closing tags, so you have an opening tag and a closing tag, and then the content the things between them specify what's inside of the tag. So you have, the HTML tag, which basically is the entire HTML page. Everything goes inside of there, and then we have these two major parts of the web page. So before I go into that, I'd just like to remind you guys that you can, at any moment, if you ever get confused, go to the resources page. If I'm going too fast or something, go to Web Resources and go to the Codem Academy Web Fundamentals link. So this will give a much more comprehensive introduction to HTML and CSS than I'm going to do, just because of time constraints. So this will they'll have exercises and things you can do, and I highly recommend doing this if this is your first time being introduced to HTML and web development in general. Anyway, so coming back here, so we have this header part of the document, and like it says in the comment here, meta information and styles go here. So meta information, like the title of the page. So here I've written that the title is our first web page. So if you go take a look, our first web page shows up as the title. So let's close that. And I've also included a link to this style sheet over here, which is currently empty, but we'll come back to it. So that is basically what goes inside of the header, and inside of the body tag, basically the content of the whole web page goes in here. So this is all the stuff that you can see. Any JavaScript files, which we'll talk about later, will go inside of here as well. So in this example, I'm going to be going over how to basically make this page here. There's not that much stuff going on compared to, like, I don't know, Facebook or whatever, but we have some common elements that I want to point out. We have a sort of a navigation bar, a nav bar. It has important links and stuff. We have a logo. We have this big call out, big header, introduction to UFT developers, what we are, an iPad, and then we have sort of a little introduction to where we are, some links, and then we have a slider. So I'm not going to build this slider now because this includes JavaScript and things like that, but and then finally there's a footer, but we're going to make sort of like a copy, something that looks like this. So the idea is, in the next little bit, we're going to kind of copy this page and make it in our current document here. So let's start with something very easy. Alright, so getting back to actually doing something, before I actually do something, I will get back to what this doc type tag is. So basically, it tells the browser what version of HTML you're using. There's HTML1, HTML2, HTML3, HTML4, and HTML5, and like XHTML and a bunch of other things. And those doc types tags don't look so pretty as this. So this is HTML5. If you're interested in what the other kinds look like, you can go look that up on your own. I'm just going to go ahead and use this pretty clean looking one. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do a hello world. so that we can see what that looks like. So if we refresh the page, now we see hello world. Okay, so let's start trying to make this page. So let's go and start with the nav bar. So nav bar, basically we have this element, we have the logo, and we have this list of links. So let's go and do that. Okay, so remove this. So we're going to use a div tag, and I am going to class this as navbar. So a class will allow us to apply stylings later. I'm just going to quickly show you how you do that. So just as a note, there are two different types of things we can use to class. There's class and there's ID. I'll get to IDs later, but basically this will allow us to apply stylings later, which we'll come back to. Okay, so inside of the navbar we have the logo. Before I do that though, I'm going to make a inner navbar class. I'll explain why in a bit. Inner, actually let's call it navbar inner. Okay, so we have this navbar inner. Inside of here, let's put the logo. I'll put uftdev. Make this all stylized and whatnot. And then after that, we're going to have a list. So there are two types of lists. There are ordered lists and unordered lists. Ordered lists have like numbers before them, and unordered lists have bullet points. So we're not going to use either of those. Well, we're going to use an unordered list, but we're going to take away the styling later. A list element inside of a list is denoted by the li tag, and then a link by the anchor tag, this a tag here. So within the a tag, we're going to specify what this is linking to. So we have about, contacts, execs, resources. Now since I don't have any of those other pages set up, I'm just going to set those to link to nothing. So this hashtag basically means that it's linking to an element that is on the current page, and I'm just going to leave it blank because we're not going to link it to anything. So it goes about, contact, execs, resources. So let's do about, and then I'm going to copy this little piece and duplicate it, and let's put contact, execs, and resources. Alright, so what does this look like? We refresh the page, and we have something that doesn't look anything like a navbar. But it will, I promise. That will be something that we do in the stylings. So I'm going to first go over the stylings, show you how that works, and then we'll go and build the rest of the page and then apply stylings to those. Alright, so let's get into applying stylings to our navbar. So let's just add a class to this list here. I'm going to call it let's call it navbar items. And you know what, just for the sake of switching things up, let's make this logo have an ID instead of a class, so I'm able to show you how those work too. Okay, so let's go to the styles.css. So this, as I mentioned earlier, is included in the header. So everything that's in the styles.css file will be included on the page and will show up on the page basically. Okay, so we'll start with the navbar. So to target a class, we use this dot notation. So that means class, and just to show you what a logo is, an ID, we target it with this hash. So hash before logo, dot before navbar, hash before ID, and dot before class. To specify a specific element, you don't use either of those. So for example, if I want to be really specific, I can say div dot navbar, and that would mean like a particular element that's a div, and we're going to specify that the class is a navbar, but I'm not going to get that specific yet, but I will eventually. Okay, so on this navbar, I'm just going to write some stuff, and I'll explain kind of what I'm doing. So I want the width to be 100%, I want the navbar to take up the entire page, and what else? Now, I think that's enough for navbar. I think what I'll do is I'll just write the code, and then sort of I'll probably edit it later or something to explain exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment. Okay. So after some messing around, we finally got something that kind of looks like a navbar. I did some additional stuff off screen, but don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. I'll explain what I did. So this is significantly prettier because I spent a significantly longer amount of time doing this one. But we can sort of see things generally coming together. We have this UFT dev in the corner. We have all these links here, and we have this kind of this border at the bottom. So this is way better than what we had earlier. So the styling for this looks like this. We have the navbar vertical line center, meaning all the elements will be aligned in the center. With 100%, height 60 pixels. I put a border on the bottom of it, and then the navbar inner, which is sort of centered in the middle. I have padding, margin left, margin right. This is a great way to center something. I put a width on it, 960 pixels. And then on the list, the display type I've set to inline block. That basically means that they can sort of sit next to each other, because when you have something, the default is display block, which forces them to go on a new line. So this allows, for example, the logo to be right beside this list. And then the logo, I didn't do anything crazy with it, just made it blue, and the font size is now 20 pixels. So I'm just going to show you this with the inspect element. So we can go in and we can actually go look at all the styles on the side here. So we can see on the navbar, sorry, this is actually supposed to be vertical line middle. Not perfect. Okay. So we can see the navbar all selected, and you can go inspect all the stylings and things on all the elements. So for example, on this list, I can inspect element and see the styling on all the individual elements. Great, so now we have a working navbar. So let's build everything else. Alright, so I've kind of gone ahead and I've skipped ahead and created this little piece right here. This sort of main callout area that has the pretty picture of Toronto in the background, and I've also gone ahead and created one of these elements that contains all this text and things. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what the HTML and CSS looks like for that. So the way I've split things up, we have that navbar element that we made earlier. Inside we have everything that we talked about. And then I've created a footer, which I haven't done anything with. I've just made it. And then everything else that's in between is inside of this div called contents. So there are two things right now within contents. There's this part, there's this element right here, and then there's this element right here. So this element, if we inspect it, it's called hero callout, and both of these elements, this one and that one, both have this class called container extended, and then within they both have container. So what container extended is, it just takes up the width of the page, and I've set the minimum height to be 200 pixels, and the background is sort of like this light gray, and there's a border on the bottom of 1 pixel. Okay, and then within each of these extended containers we have a container, which is sort of a smaller area where all of our content will go. So set the width to be 200 pixels, padding 20, and then I've set a margin left and margin right to be auto, which is a pretty good way of centering things horizontally. So this container will actually be centered exactly in the middle of the extended container. Finally, with the hero callout, with the Toronto in the background, I did sort of a tricky thing, which is I set the background to have this nice blue color, but to also have this image as the background as well. And then I set the height to be 500 pixels, which is the height of this picture here. Okay, so what we're missing is this UFT dev hello world and the iPad. So we're first going to make this little piece right here. So if we go back to the code, let's go ahead and do that. So here we're going to use an H1, which stands for header 1. There's header 1, header 2, header 3, and header 1 is the largest. So let's put the UFT dev hello world in here, world, and then let's use an H3 to put the rest of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and put here. Awesome. So this is going to be the wrong color, but I'm just going to show you. You can see it's black and it looks weird. So let's make it white. So these are within hero callout, and let's target them. We're going to target H1 and well, let's target H2 as well, H3, and let's make them white. Color white, and just for kicks, let's make the H1 bigger. Actually, let's do this on all H1s. So every single H1 is going to have a font size of 60 pixels. Bam! Looks good. So let's move on to making the iPad. Okay, so let's continue making this page. So the next element that we're going to want to make is this iPad right here. So it's not very complicated. We basically just have to get an image right here. So let's go and do that. So I have the image set up here in the images directory right here. It's just an image I got from Google, and I think I cropped it a little bit. Okay, so the tag we're going to use is the image tag. So we're going to put it within this hero callout. And the image tag is another one of those tags that does not have a closing tag. So we put the source to be within the images directory, and the name is iPad-crop.png. iPad-cropped.png. Close the tag up, and let's see what we have. Okay, so that's obviously not in the right place. So I'm going to show you a couple of things we can do. So, let's do with CSS. So let us first put an ID on this. Let's call it iPad, because I'm not very creative. And let's put it here. So just so that we can be all specific with the selectors, no, not needed. Let's call it iPad. And then let's make sure I call it ID. Yes. Okay, cool. Alright, so there are 3 different ways of positioning things, as far as I know. Well, 3 different main ways anyway. So let's set the position. I'll show you guys a trick. To be relative. So there are 3 different types of positioning methods. One is fixed, which means that the element will be fixed, like it will be positioned relative to the browser window. So that's one way that we get nav bars stuck to the top, and which I'll show you at the end, and like elements like stuck to the side and things like that, because it's positioned relative to the window. There's also position absolute, which is positioned relative to the document, so the overall web page. So like that's how you get stuff stuck to the top, but then when you scroll down, it'll like stay at the top and not be stuck to the browser window. And then lastly, we have position relative, which basically means that it'll be positioned relative to where it would be. So you can move it like 10 pixels to the right or whatever from where it would normally be. So we're going to use position absolute on this one. So there's a combination of things you can do. So we can position the iPad absolutely within the containing element. So the way we do that is by setting the position to be absolute with the iPad, and then setting within the containing element the position to be relative. So this is called relative absolute positioning. So it hasn't moved anywhere. So let's mess around with it. So let's first put it on the left. So this is a great way to sort of position things and get things the way you want. You can sort of mess around with it here, and then when you're happy with the way something looks, you can go back and like edit the actual CSS file. So let's see what 0 pixels looks like on the left. Sorry. Okay. Let's get it there. And then from the bottom, let's put that 0 pixels as well. Okay, so that is a relatively good place for it to be. To make it more consistent, let's move it over a little bit. So we'll make it right like, let's make it like 20 pixels. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then if we mess around with this, then you see it sticks to where it's supposed to be. So I'm happy with that. So we'll stick with that and make it right 20 pixels, and then bottom 0 pixels. Let's refresh the page, and bam, it's nicely positioned. Okay, so the next little bit will be making this bit, and then finally the footer. So let's get started with that. Alright, so I've gone ahead and skipped ahead and sort of created this little piece, or at least a not so pretty version of that myself. And then I'm going to sort of explain what's going on to save us some time. Okay, so if you look at the HTML for this, there's not that much going on. Basically, you created another container extended and then another container. Within an H2, we have the who are we, and then within a paragraph element, which is the P tag, we have this little blurb about the UFT Developers Club. And then finally, we have a button element, which I've classed with 2 classes, button and blue. And I'll sort of explain why you'd normally do that. So, for example, if you have a button type and you want all the buttons to be very consistent, then you'd sort of style it one way for all buttons, and then the blue would just change the colors, for example. Anyhow, so we have this button class. Okay. So if we look at the styling, I've done a couple things. There's not too much going on in terms of the H1s and the paragraph. Oh, sorry, the H2. H2, I just set the font size to be 42 pixels. I've set the color of every, basically every text element within a container to be blue, which is then overridden by, like, for example, this H1, H2, H3 thing here. The most that's going on is with the button element. So I'll show you what a normal button element looks like, at least for Chrome. Every browser is different. So let's put another button like right beside it. Test. So you can see it looks like that, which is fairly different than this. So what's going on here with our button? So this button blue, this is how you select two at the same time. You have dot button, dot blue right next to each other. If you put a space in between, that basically means blue that is within a button element, and this means that they are the same on the same element. So I've set the background color to be a light shade of blue. Board radius 5 pixels. This means that the element, the button has it's sort of rounded, and 5 pixels is the radius. Padding 5 pixels. Padding is like the spacing in between what's inside and the border. Font size 18 pixels, pretty clear. The color is the color of the text. Cursor is pointer. So as you see, we can go over this, and then we see a pointer. This is a pseudo selector. What's called a pseudo selector. So this hover selector basically tells the browser that when we put the mouse over the element, then we want something to happen. So theoretically, I could do some crazy stuff. Like I could say the color will change to red when we put the color of the text will turn to red when we hover over the element. So sorry, let me save this and refresh, and we now see it turns to red. So you don't want to do that because that hurts my eyes. But anyway, that's some of what's going on with this. So you'll notice that this is not as pretty as the button here. That's because there's a lot more going on with this button. Like if we go look at it, then you'll see there are tons of gradients and filters and things like that going on. So the point of this, we're going to make something that's a little bit less pretty than this, but the idea is to sort of show you how it's done, and then you can go crazy on your own. And I'm also going to, at the end of this lecture, show you some resources to go to and to use to make making something like this that looks really good a lot easier. Okay, so the next two things that we want to do are, well, we're not going to make the slider, but we're going to make something that kind of looks like a slider. And then finally, we have the footer. So let's get started. Okay, so I've gone ahead and, to save us some time, I created another container extended element, and I put a container inside of the footer. So let's go ahead and, oh, by the way, I don't know if you noticed I'm sniffing a lot, so I'm kind of sick, so I apologize if you cannot understand what I'm saying, which hopefully you can. Anyway, so let's continue. So if we look here, we have one of these sort of titles, check out what we're up to, and then we have this sort of image, and then within the image we have like this background with some text about what's going on. So we're not going to make it look as good as this. We can if we took a lot of time, but that's not what I want to teach you guys. It's more so how to do this kind of thing. So let's go ahead and do it. So let's create a div, and we're going to call this is going to be a slider. And by the way, this is something that looks like a slider. It's not actually going to be a slider. A slider would be much more complicated. And within this, we're going to put an image tag. Source equals, I think I have an image sitting here. Right, so we'll use this one, mg1.jpg. So, images, mg1.jpg. Within this, we're going to have another div, and I'm going to class it as, let's call it like slider, or I don't know, yeah, slider info or something like this. Div. And within this, let's put an h3. Actually, I'll introduce you guys to the span element. So a span element is just when you want to kind of add custom stylings to some text. So I'm going to class this as span class equals text, and then we'll put inside meet and greet. And I don't know, I think that should be good enough. So if we refresh the page, this is not going to look like anything because we have not put any stylings yet. Well, it looks you know, half decent. So let's go ahead and add the remaining parts. So we're going to want some sort of button type elements. So within the slider, let's add those. So we're going to put, I'm just going to make them buttons. It's going to look horrible. So we're going to say this is, ID it as button left. I'll make another one called button right. Ta-da! Okay. So we're going to want to do a couple of things. So let's do the absolute relative positioning trick that we did earlier. So let's create this dot, what do I call it? Slider. We're going to say position relative. And then on all these other ones, this meet and greet stuff, and this, we're going to make them absolute. I called them slider info, button left and button right. So within the dot slider, we want button right, button left, and the last one is the slider info. Okay, that hasn't done anything. So I'm going to pause for a bit. I'm going to sort of mess around and get it right, and then I'll explain what I did. Okay, so here I've created a half decent looking fake slider. Nowhere near as pretty as this, but yeah, it'll do. So what I've done is picking up from where we left off. I added a few things. I added this header 2 that says check out what we're up to, and I put these characters within the button left and button right. So the majority of what I did is in the styling. So I did the absolute relative positioning. We put the position of all these elements as absolute, and then within the slider put the position to be relative. Also set the width to be 940 pixels so that it perfectly fits around the picture here. which is important considering that these elements need to be on top of the picture. So on slider info, which is this element right here with the black containing this meet and greet, background color black with 100%, so it wraps the entire element. Color is white. I fixed it to the bottom, and then set the height to be 60 pixels and font size 18. With the two buttons, basically set the bottom to be 50% from the top. So it's going to be basically put in the middle. You could also put top 50%, do the same thing. Same thing here. Really the only difference between these two is that right is set to 0 on button right, so it's fixed to the right, and then button left, the left is set to 0. So that's pretty much it, but let's go inspect the elements so that we can see what we're talking about. So here we have the slider element. Within it we have this image, we have the slider info, and we have these sort of set up. So you can go inspect those, and I think I'll probably provide these files at the end so you can sort of mess around with them if you want, make them better, because this is a lot to be improved upon. But hopefully you sort of get the idea of what's going on behind this. So lastly, we're going to go ahead and then create the footer. And the very last thing after I wrap up will be sort of to create this fixed header right here, because right now our header is it's positioned absolutely or relatively, so it's stuck to the top. So I'll show you guys how to do that and make it look all pretty. So let's go make the footer. Okay, so getting started with the footer. So I basically copied and pasted into the HTML something very similar to what was going on in the nav bar. So this is one of the great things about CSS, you can kind of reuse classes and things like that if you sort of structure your stuff well. So we have this nav bar items, and we have nav bar inner and the logo and things. So I've just copied the logo, copied the nav bar items class, except I have different items. I have Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube instead of the things that are in the header or the nav bar. So let's get this looking like the nav bar, or sorry, like the footer over here. So let's go to styles, and on .footer we're going to want to set the background color to be the same shade of blue, so I can't spell, to be the same shade of blue as is in the other one, so I think I'm using it here, so let's just copy that. And then let's override the minimum height. So if you'll notice, a container, I've set it to have a minimum height, container extend I've set to have a minimum height of 200 pixels. We don't want that. We actually want 60 pixels. And the last thing we want to do, you'll see, is we want to change the color of these links and the UFD dev. You can't read those. So let's do that. We're going to say inside of the footer, we want both .logo and the A element, the anchor element, those links, to have the white color. And there we go. So now we've set up our footer to look somewhat like this one. So the last thing we're going to do is make the header, the nav bar, like this one, and fixed to the top. So this is actually a pretty simple process. It's not going to require much code. So we're going to go to the nav bar, and we're going to set the position to be fixed, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to set the Z index, which is sort of the position in 3D space towards us, to be a ridiculously high number, like 1000. We're going to set the background color to be white, and we'll see what that looks like. So if you'll notice, now it's fixed to the top. However, you'll see that it's kind of like overlaying on top of this element right here. So the way we're going to fix that is, if you'll remember, the way things we structured it, we put everything inside of the contents element, and the nav bar and the footer outside. So let's modify the contents element to have a 60 pixels padding, so that everything gets bumped down. So let's put that right here. See, contents, padding, top, 60 pixels. So, perfect. Now we have all the elements that are in this site, except it looks much worse. But we've got everything across, so I'm going to stop for a moment and I'll come back and wrap up. Okay, so we're back. So I'm going to mention a couple things to help you guys when you're trying to do something similar to this. So to build this, what I used was something called Twitter Bootstrap, which basically provides you with a bunch of components and styles and things like that that you can work from. So here are the super pretty buttons. And it gives you a bunch of starter elements and things, you know, that are in base CSS. So you can look through this website, just look up Twitter Bootstrap, and you'll find it in a lot of pro websites and things like this are built using Bootstrap. There are a couple other ones. There's something called Foundation, and there's another one called HTML5 boilerplate. So these are all just sort of base styles to work from, so that you don't have to go and do what I did, which is kind of like modify these sort of things. However, a good way to learn is to do that kind of stuff on your own, and then later on you can use things like Bootstrap, but that's really up to you. So the second thing I want to mention is that if you'll notice, I've been kind of stopping every 5 minutes and then starting up again. So the reason I did that was because the thing I'm using to record, which is this thing, is called a Cam Studio. For whatever reason, when I record more than 5 minutes, it crashes, which is extremely frustrating. So if you guys have any suggestions as to a better program to record with, please send that my way. So finally, when we actually have the lecture, what I'd like you guys to do is to create basically anything you want. One suggestion would be to make a site for yourself, so like a kind of about me sort of site, and just have information about yourself, maybe pictures or something like that. If you have another idea, then go ahead with that. Just one page will be great, and me and the team lead will be there in lecture to help you guys out. So it's going to be more of like a tutorial type thing. So anyhow, I really hope you enjoyed the first lecture and that you find this helpful. So all of these links and things will be included in the description, so all the source code and whatnot will also be included on the website and on the description of the video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.